never save money. Those were the exact words my grandfather told me, and honestly, it completely shocked me. Every financial guru, every parent, and every textbook always screams the exact same advice. Save your money. Save for a rainy day. Protect your future. But my grandfather just looked at me, smiled through his deep wrinkles, and said, "No, son, don't just save money. Make money grow." Traditional saving is a slow, silent trap. Let me tell you his story, because it completely changed the trajectory of my life. Decades ago, in a remote village where opportunity was scarce, lived an old man. The local villagers didn't respect him. In fact, they openly called him lazy. He didn't work a regular job. Instead, every single day, he would walk over to a massive banyan tree at the edge of the village and just sit there for hours. He would stare endlessly at the blue sky, watch the dust clouds kicked up by distant travelers, and dream out loud. One day, he would whisper to anyone walking past, "I am going to open the grandest shop in this valley. One day, I will buy a massive herd of cows. One day, I will become incredibly wealthy." But that mysterious one day never actually arrived. He spent all his time dreaming, but he never actually did the hard work required to build anything. At first, the villagers laughed loudly at his grand illusions. But as the years drifted by, they stopped laughing entirely. The amusement died out, replaced by a heavy, suffocating pity. People started looking away when they walked past his tree. While he was busy building imaginary empires in his mind, his actual reality was falling apart. His wife was the only reason the household didn't completely collapse. Her hands were permanently rough from cooking, washing, and cleaning for wealthier neighbors, desperately trying to keep their family alive. She never screamed at him, but one quiet evening, as the shadows lengthened across their porch, she sat beside him and spoke very softly. "Dreams are beautiful, my love," she said, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "But dreams cannot fill an empty stomach. We don't need promises anymore. We need money. We need real work." The old man simply nodded his head, staring into the dark. "Someday," he whispered, "someday I will find the perfect way." Days slowly turned into months. Months hardened into years. Life in the village became brutally difficult. Food supplies dwindled, and their remaining money was almost completely gone. Then, the ultimate breaking point arrived on a freezing winter night. The old man's little grandson walked into the room. The boy was completely barefoot, his skin pale, and his body thin from hunger. He approached the old man and asked very softly, "Grandpa, do we have any bread?" The grandmother slowly walked over to the wooden cupboard and pulled the doors open. It was completely empty. There was no bread, no rice, no flour, absolutely nothing. The old man felt a sudden, agonizing pain shoot straight through his heart. He looked at his grandson's sunken eyes and felt hot tears welling up in his own. In that moment of absolute silence, he finally understood a devastating truth. Dreams are comforting, but dreams alone cannot feed the people you love. He couldn't sleep a single wink that night. He tossed and turned in his bed, his stomach growling from hunger, his mind weighed down by a crushing sense of guilt. The very next morning, he did something he had never done in his entire life. He walked out of the house with a clear purpose: to find manual labor. He became a field worker on a distant estate. The sun was brutally hot, beating down on his neck like fire, and the land was dry and cracked. He worked for grueling hours, lifting heavy iron tools that tore into his soft hands. His back ached constantly. His feet burned against the scorching earth, and his skin became rough and calloused. Every night he dragged his exhausted body back home. His wife would cook whatever tiny amount of food they could afford, maybe a few beans, maybe 1 or 2 thin tortillas, nothing more. His grandson would always run to the door, asking, "Grandpa, what did you earn today?" The old man would open his hand, revealing a few small coins. "It is very little, my boy, but it is real." But soon a frustrating pattern emerged. The money came in, but it instantly vanished. Food took a piece, medicine took a piece, bills took the rest. The intense physical labor never stopped, but the problems remained exactly the same. The roof still leaked when it rained, and the family was still constantly hungry. True saving felt completely impossible. One afternoon at the local village store, the old man overheard a group of wealthy men talking. One man leaned back and said loudly, "The absolute secret to financial freedom is saving money. When you save your cash, you build a fortress that keeps you safe." Those words stuck deep inside the old man's mind. A fortress, he thought. That is exactly what we need. That night, he hunted down an old glass jar, wiped it clean, and hid it securely underneath his bed. Every single week, no matter how desperately they needed things, he would sacrifice a little more to drop a few coins inside. Clink, clink. The sound of metal hitting glass filled him with an incredible sense of hope. One day, his grandson discovered the hidden jar and asked, "What is this, Grandpa?" The old man smiled warmly and whispered, "This jar holds our tomorrow." But building that tomorrow required immense sacrifice. The old man wore shoes that were completely falling apart. He refused to buy new clothes, and they deliberately cut down their food portions even more. Their plates were practically empty most nights. Still, he stubbornly saved every single coin. The grandmother eventually asked him in frustration, "What is the point of hoarding money when we are actively starving right now?" He simply replied, "Be patient. One day you will finally understand." Months flew by, and the glass jar finally became full to the very brim. The old man felt immensely proud. For the first time in his life, he felt completely safe and prepared for the future. The next morning, the family walked down to the grand market. The old man proudly placed the heavy jar of money onto the merchant's table and said, "I want to purchase 3 large sacks of corn." The merchant slowly counted out the coins, shook his head, and pushed half the money back. "Old man, things have changed. Prices skyrocketed months ago. This amount of money can only buy you 1.5 sacks now." The old man stood there, completely paralyzed with shock. His money had literally lost its value while sitting quietly under his bed. Things had become significantly more expensive, and his slow savings couldn't keep up with reality. The weight of helplessness returned instantly. That evening, he sat outside in total silence, watching his neighbors walk past. One neighbor carried a basket of fresh eggs, another led a cow bursting with milk. They looked completely peaceful, entirely free from the fear that was crushing him. Suddenly, a tiny spark of an idea entered his mind. Ideas are like seeds. If you plant them, they grow. He looked at his grandson and asked, "What if we buy chickens?" This time, he didn't wait for some day. He didn't hesitate. He took his remaining savings, went to a local farmer, and bought a few thin, ordinary chickens. The boy laughed with pure joy, running around the birds. "Grandpa, look, we have our very own egg factory." At first, they found just 1 egg, then 2. They ate a couple to nourish themselves and sold the rest to neighbors. With the small profit they generated, the old man didn't save the cash. He immediately bought another chicken, then another. Slowly, the flock grew. Slowly, the income multiplied. The old man kept precise notes in a small pocketbook, recording every single egg sold and every single coin earned. Soon, people from across the village were queuing up at his house to buy fresh produce. The dark, quiet home was suddenly filled with vibrant life and overwhelming hope. The old man started smiling again. He was still working incredibly hard, but this time he was building his own equity, not just surviving. One beautiful morning, he held a single warm egg in his hand and looked deeply into his grandson's eyes. This egg, my boy, is infinitely more powerful than a glass jar overflowing with hidden cash. Money can finish in an instant. Money can lose its value overnight. But when you deploy your money the right way, it takes on a life of its own and begins to multiply. The grandson wrapped his arms around him tightly and whispered, "So, you really aren't that lazy dreamer anymore, Grandpa?" The old man smiled as a tear rolled down his cheek. "No, my child. I finally learned the ultimate rule of this world. Never just save money. Make your money grow." From that unforgettable day forward, he dedicated his life to passing this wisdom down to everyone he met. Saving money in isolation is exactly like trying to hold water inside an open hand. It will slowly but surely slip away through your fingers until nothing is left. But when you use your money to build an asset, no matter how small or humble it might seem at the very beginning, you are planting a seed that will eventually grow into an unstoppable forest. Don't let your cash sit idle in a comfort trap. Invest in yourself, buy assets, and start building. Even the smallest, most terrifying first step can completely rewrite your destiny.